Rich, welcome to the feed. How are you doing this morning?
Very well. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining me. I have to ask almost, did you take an autonomous vehicle to get here? But I guess we'll get to that later. Kind of tradecraft, right?
I wish I had done. As you probably know, 400, 401, all over the place. Every single time you take them, you see at least 17 people on their cell phones. Poor driving, inattentive, impaired, all kinds of things. So it would have been nice if I could have done that. But we move goods, not people. So we'll get into that.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this because I'm so fascinated by this space, this combination, this intersection of everything from AI to machine vision to technology to, it's almost futuristic, but the future is here now, as someone once said. And I'm a big fan of autonomous vehicles. I've taken one as, in cities, and I often say to myself, I'm way safer than the average person that I might get behind the wheel with, and I'm just very intrigued in how this fits into the supply chain, and so anyway.
This sort of gets to the Gatic question, right? And the why. The supply chain, I think, is something that your average listener probably wasn't thinking too much about prior to COVID, right? There's a really good kind of...
It's such a great point. I mean, the word supply chain were just like the word font 20 years ago. Nobody knew font or curring, and now everybody's talking about supply chain. It was really such an inflection moment in understanding how goods got on the shelf, right?
That's right. And what I've found, what we've seen is that when things break down, that's when everybody, needs to become an armchair expert, right? Yeah. So COVID happened, and suddenly the supply chain was totally dysfunctional, hugely problematic, and people needed stuff still in the same way, on-demand economy, even more so, essential goods, essential supplies. So the average consumer was very, very aware of it, and that was a huge moment for us as a company. We'll talk, go further back, and we'll talk about the use case and where it came from. Right. COVID really kicked things into a higher gear, and we've never looked back. I mean, the consumerism has never looked back, right? Just in terms of how people want their favorite, best loved goods and supplies, higher frequency, closer to home, lower cost. So again, enter autonomous trucking, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the different components of supply chain, because you are more focused as a company, particularly with Loblaw, I think more middle mile, a little bit doorstep, but we're going to kind of break that down a little bit later in our conversation. What's the origin story? Who's behind the organization? You've been there 6 years, so predates COVID, but those were pretty early days for AI as well. Now again, AI is like supply chain now. Everybody's talking about AI. So talk about the origin behind the company.
Sure. So it's your classic Silicon Valley story. So three incredibly smart people came up with an idea in a garage in Sunnyvale, California. Right? The bootstrap.
Literally, I mean your truck.
No,
your truck.
Oh
really?
No, quite literally. We've seen the photos for three founders.
I hope you still have the garage door and you kind of in the lobby.
The garage still exists, and the photographs of the founders inside the garage still exist. Coming up with this world-changing idea, bootstrapping it from the ground up, and here we are, almost a decade later at this point, with something that is truly impacting the supply chain, North America-wide. Efficiency, scalability, safety, reliability, durability, all of these really powerful concepts, which we worked diligently to try and achieve over the course of the past decade, now seeing actioned with multiple customers across the continent. So it's a pretty exciting time to be at our company.
So you have locations here in Ontario and in Canada. You also have, I think I saw Texas as well, and a few other spots around the world, yeah?
That's right. So Ontario, Toronto is very much our Canadian HQ, Canadian home base. We are also operational across Texas, multiple locations, Arkansas, Arizona, and some other jurisdictions as well.
Everybody says Arizona, right? No, it's interesting. I want to get to this a bit later, but Arizona and Toronto have some things in common, but one thing they don't have in common is the weather. Arizona is perfect. I don't even know if it has ever snowed there. But then you got to deal with the heat. So that's a whole other thing. We're probably down a rabbit hole about how to make those trucks work.
Well, that's true. And there's interesting weather systems everywhere to contend with. So you're right, of course. I mean, anyone that spent a winter in Toronto will know what you have to deal with here in terms of freezing rain and snow and all the rest of it. But Arizona has dust storms, so you got to contend with dust storms. So there's some sensor occlusion issues there to deal with, which we can talk about.
They just had a big haboob. They call it, I think, a haboob. These ginormous dust storms. It's just unbelievable. You see it in movies, but a friend of mine was in Phoenix, and he goes, check out what's coming towards me. So that's interesting. I didn't even think about the variety and the spectrum of weather that can affect how we drive. Of course, we know it intuitively.
Also got coyotes as well.
And
There's some animals to contend with too.
Where you got? Did you know that there are more raccoons in Toronto than children under the age of 10? Here's a fun factoid for you. So you got raccoons to deal with in Toronto.
If you take nothing else away from this podcast, there you go. You know that. Yeah.
Take that away. We said earlier in the podcast that I brought up this notion of the middle mile. So you've been talking a lot about how consumers get their goods to their doorstep, but of course the supply chain has many, many bigger parts, including from vendor to retailer, and then from retailer to their stores. Where do you play, and where do you specialize?
Yeah, great question. So let me just situate us in the landscape of autonomous transportation. So one end of the spectrum, you have companies going after the long haul side of things. So that's your Class 8 big rigs. So coast to coast deliveries in theory, high payloads, big payloads, operating on highways pretty much exclusively. On the other end of the spectrum, you have what's called B2C applications of the technology. So delivering a small payload, small package, lower speeds on public roads, but lower speeds.
Business to consumer, just for the listener. B2C.
Thank you. Business to consumer. So delivering a pizza or a bag of groceries, for example, to a consumer's doorstep. So that's a direct to household delivery. So those are the two ends of the spectrum. Where Gatic lives and succeeds is regional transportation architecture, so regional logistics networks. So moving goods between micro-fulfillment centers, that's your automated picking facilities, so bring in Loblaw here, right? So robotic picking facilities where your goods are sort of organized and packed and placed into delivery vehicles.
Store managers put an order in, or there's some projection, I need the following things today, tomorrow, and that's in all kinds of different places, so it's quickly and easily accessible to the stores.
Exactly. So those types of locations, distribution centers and warehouses, and delivering the goods to retail locations and other convenient pickup points where consumers can actually get the goods. So if you imagine sort of how this plays out, you want your order pretty much immediately. So you enter your order online on Loblaw's website, and within 3 hours, inventory has been moved around from location to location to make sure that it's at the right place such that the delivery truck can move it to a place that you can go and get it from. That's where we come in. So Gatic picks up the goods, takes it to your local retail store, and that's where you grab your goods by, say, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so now we've kind of laid the groundwork, so to speak, plowed the road, if I can, use a lot of metaphors about moving goods.
Carry on.
Let's change gears for a little bit. Let's talk about the technology that powers what you do. Were there any kind of particular breakthroughs? Lately, we've been hearing about this agentic AI, machine vision, but your genesis of your company goes back a few years. What is it? Is it compute power? What are the things that make this technology happen?
So the automating driving system, the technology which powers Gatic's autonomous trucks, that's what we develop in-house. So that's our proprietary software. We integrate that software with what we call an off-the-shelf sensor suite, if you like, by way of the fact that we work with the globe's best and brightest in terms of LiDAR, camera, radar, GNSS. So for anyone that's less familiar with this technology, so LiDAR essentially sends out a significant number of laser beams at a very high rate, which bounce off stationary and moving objects, send back that laser beam to our vehicle so that the vehicle can situate itself. Creates point clouds so that we can see everything around it.
Okay.
Radar,
is that what helps them detect like a coyote or a raccoon or something like that? There's something in front of them?
Absolutely, as well as a more traditional vulnerable road user and or vehicle that is moving, or a tree, stationary object, a road sign, absolutely anything at all, right? Okay. Radar as well, but best used similarly, but of course helps when there are foggy conditions, for example, where LiDAR might struggle slightly. Radar can use sound in a similar way to bounce back to our vehicle again, help place the vehicle in its surroundings so that it can operate safely. GNSS for global positioning, and cameras, of course, essentially acting like our eyes.
Like cameras.
Exactly, so that the vehicle can see. And all of this technology combined, I'm not an engineer, as you know, so I'll give you the layman's description of what I've just said. We can see about the length of 6 football fields, day or night, 360 degrees.
Wow. Okay. No matter what the weather. So even if you get a dust storm or you get a snowstorm, the combination of these things can see through that.
Very powerful technology, which ensures that our vehicles have such a significantly greater capacity to see and operate and deliver more safely than, frankly, a human being would be capable of. If you think about the range of perception and the length of vision that we have, there are no blind spots around our vehicle, right? Not to mention we take an incredibly defensive style of driving, and everything that we do within the context of our use case is structured for safety. So I'll talk a little bit about that because it's important. When we say regional logistics architecture, what do I really mean?
Is that like no left turns kind of thing? Is that factor into it?
Left turns are fair game. However, we would always prioritize taking 2 or 3 right turns to avoid an unprotected left if we could, right? Because it's safer to do so.
Right.
So Loblaw and our other customers will say to Gatic, hey, we need you to deliver goods between point A and point B, or point X, point Y, wherever it might be, because this is where you can be most valuable. This is where you can deliver on our supply chain to the benefit of our end consumers. We choose the route that we take to optimize for safety. So to your point, we can take an unprotected left perfectly well. However, if there's an opportunity to avoid it by taking more right turns, it doesn't matter to the bags of groceries in the back of the truck if the route takes 7 minutes longer, for example.
So safety's priority. Second is efficiency, if we call it efficiency. We've gone 15 minutes into this, and I think we should pause and talk about autonomous delivery and what we're actually talking about here. This is, and now you operate around the world, so there's probably different, we'll get to this, regulatory regimes about how this happens. But in essence, we're talking about a truck that drives itself, and there's no driver in that truck. There may be talk me through that. So in Ontario, where we are today, in Canada, how does it work?
Right. So, well, first of all, let me talk about the regulatory environment. So we have worked very, very closely with the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario for many years at this point. We first deployed with Loblaw back at the end of 2019, expanded the partnership with Loblaw to multiple vehicles in 2021. So we've been operating for some considerable time on public roads here. So working very closely with the regulators who oversee all interactions with autonomous vehicle companies like ours is front and center. There's a really well-structured and robust regulatory regime here in Ontario now, not just for smaller classes of vehicles, but also for larger autonomous commercial motor vehicles. That program went live in August of this year, and it's under that program that Gatic will be deploying 50 trucks for Loblaw, which is the largest single deployment of autonomous trucks, anywhere across the continent. So it's a hugely proud moment for our partnership with Loblaw.
And these are mid-sized vehicles, like middle-mile mid-sized vehicles. These aren't the 53-foot trailers that you're describing, these 50 vehicles.
That's correct. So medium duty. So we integrate our technology into Isuzu vehicle platforms. Great partnership for us there with Isuzu. They've been best in class for medium-duty trucks for 100 years or so. So partnership there came together very quickly, but the deployment of 50 medium-duty trucks, Gatic and Loblaw, expanding across the GTA, making sure ultimately that millions of Loblaw's consumers are benefiting from the safety, supply chain, and reliability benefits across the supply chain of what we're doing together is really huge for us.
Now, is there a safety driver in these vehicles today? I mean, there's probably parts of the world where there's not. I've been in vehicles in Vegas where there's no safety driver, or San Francisco, but how does it work here?
Yeah, so it's a very structured approach that we take to deploying driverless. I'll sort of walk you through it, at a high level. We undertake millions of miles in simulation, accounting for all possibilities within the operating environment where we deploy our vehicles.
So many like I was driving here, and I'm thinking all the things that we as humans deal with, from first responders behind us going in a different direction to suddenly, it's us as the problem, right? People suddenly doing unexpected left turns or doing some strange things. What do you call them? Edge cases, right? You even got to get out to the craziest of edge case and anticipate
edge cases.
What are the things that can happen on the outs that almost never happen, but every now and then, 1 in a million times does.
The unusual edge cases are the most challenging things, right, for robots to deal with, as they are for humans to deal with.
Yeah, sure.
So we undertake significant simulation testing to make sure that we cover our bases there before moving into private closed course track testing with a human operator on board. So that's testing the autonomous system with a human being behind the wheel of the vehicle in autonomous mode in a private testing capacity before finally deploying on public roads with a human operator still behind the wheel of the vehicle in case there should be a need for intervention, before then finally phase 4, operating autonomously, so that's no driver behind the wheel. And we first deployed driverless with Loblaw back in 2022. We were the first company to deploy an autonomous transportation fleet with a retailer anywhere in the nation. So it was a very proud moment then back in 2022 for Gatic and Loblaw, and frankly for Ontario and for Canada itself.
How did the relationship start with Loblaw? A big company, of course, you would be saying who would be a great partner around the world, and how did it come to pass?
I think, and I say this in all humility, I think it came together very quickly because, as I mentioned before, consumers are very demanding. You need more trucks, more trips, and more drivers on the regional logistics networks now to make sure that that consumer demand is well met. And Gatic is the only game in town as far as autonomy on those regional transportation networks is concerned. So Loblaw really needed support in that respect, just to make sure that we were able to bolster the existing workforce and help to augment the transportation networks within that short-haul regional supply chain portion of what Loblaw is doing. And so... And enter Gatic, right, is the only party in
opportunity
town
and
that's
need
capable
met
of doing it.
Yeah.
And this is a really important point, Michael, just in terms of where the idea for the company, where the thesis came from, right? We spent a long time working with Loblaw and with other customers around the continent to say, where are you feeling the most acute pain points in your transportation networks? Is it long haul? Is it the B2C, the end portion, or is it that middle mile, the regional portion? And we heard time and time again, it's the regional portion. That's where we're struggling. That's where we need the most support. So that's how the partnership came together very quickly. And that's been our bread and butter. That's where we live and succeed.
Walk me through an average day for the fleet. Gassed up somewhere, and where is it deployed? How does it work? And just what does an average day look like for your autonomous vehicles?
Well, first of all, I want to stress the intensive safety checks and balances that go into any truck before assessing any truck before it even hits the road. So there's a huge portion of work that goes into making sure that there is a zero fault or zero defect deployment, as it were, and that's for every single truck that takes off. That's not quite the right expression. That starts its journey starts its journey every day.
Even like a human driver would circle the vehicle, tap all the tires, and do all the kind of basic stuff to make sure the vehicle
there's the absolute, it's still a mechanical vehicle, right, in certain respects. So there's still the kicking of the tires, as it were, quote unquote, those portions of vehicle maintenance checks that have to happen. And then there's, of course, checking every aspect of the autonomous system as well. Huge amount of diagnostics that go into this. So once the vehicle is confirmed, green lit, if you like, is ready to operate, the vehicle will move off to a distribution center, pick up the goods that it is scheduled to pick up, and then deliver autonomously to the retail location at which consumers are able to get their goods. And it's very much a rinse, wash and repeat situation, right? What I want to sort of stress is, I've probably made it sound quite boring, which is exactly what it is. Okay, so
right.
we are.
It's kind of like the objective, right?
That is 100% the objective. We are part of the invisible infrastructure, which is operating safely, reliably, and efficiently behind the scenes every single day and night.
Now, if you're a store manager or a store associate and this truck just shows up, and usually, I would imagine, oftentimes, in the old school or the existing world, the truck driver would say, "Hey, I'm here, and come unload my truck, or let me help you." And how does it work at the back door? It must be a fair bit of training. I want to get to this whole training and education piece, but at the back of the store. And at the warehouses, what kind of training goes on with the associates?
Well, a significant amount of training for sure, but let me talk about just your question quickly. How do folks know? So we have developed our own transportation management software, warehouse management software, such that we integrate very seamlessly with our customers' supply chains. So long before our vehicle even arrives at a retail location for a drop-off, store associates and managers are able to view on an iPad exactly where our truck is, what temperature the goods are at, when we'll be arriving, all of these data points coming through in real time. So even putting the autonomous portion to one side for a second, it's a really high level of visibility that folks have on exactly where the goods are, what's in the trucks, when they're going to be arriving. So folks at the other end can plan accordingly. So it's a really seamless process. To the education piece, absolutely, we work closely with Loblaw and other customers to ensure that there are no surprises. That's the biggest part of my job, and that's extensively across the board.
The excitement of ensuring no surprises, right?
Wow, it's exciting. It's an exciting part of my job to ensure no surprises. Working with customers, working with government stakeholders, both at the provincial and federal level, or state and federal level, to ensure everybody knows exactly how we operate, our approach to safety, where we're operating, how we do things, why we go about taking the rigorous approach to safety that we do. And again, no surprises. So everybody's aware of what we're doing.
We've talked about operating in Ontario. Are you talking to other provinces, municipalities at the federal level? We have listeners from coast to coast. When can they expect, or can they expect the same kind of autonomous vehicles on their roads?
Great question. So I've got to say, Ontario is certainly leading the way as far as an innovative and progressive autonomous trucking friendly environment is concerned in Canada. However, other provinces, let's say,
move at their own pace.
I was going to say they're looking to Ontario to say, okay, well, now we have a well-structured program in Ontario.
Sure.
How can we emulate that in an effective way that works for us in Saskatchewan or Alberta or BC, wherever it might be? Right. So I would say watch this space. It's coming. Ontario leading the way in Canada, certainly. There's a lot of interesting activity happening at the federal level as well. Ultimately, from my perspective, and I don't want to do myself out of a job here, but as important as it is today to be working in Canada at the provincial level, in the US at the state level, because that's ultimately where the large majority of the autonomous vehicle regulations are centered. It'll be great to see in Canada and frankly the US as well one day a universal legislative and regulatory regime for autonomous vehicles. Again, I don't want to do myself out of a load of work at the provinces and state levels.
I'm not really worried that in your lifetime that will be an issue. I mean, in my experience of being an advocate, it's the challenge for retailers is different regimes in different provinces cause the most amount of grief. You cross a border, you're very close to crossing a border, and now there's suddenly a slightly different regime or a slightly different thing. So that harmonization is so important across the provinces and across the states, I'm sure. So that working at that kind of harmonization level, right?
That's right. And you raised an interesting point. Although it's not happening today, and at least not to the best of my knowledge, and I'm pretty sure we would know, the interborder, right? The cross-border transportation autonomously of goods.
Sure.
So this is a.
It's not hard to imagine, though.
Like
in a city like Ottawa, you're literally across the street from Quebec. It's not unusual to have Winnipeg or Manitoba and Ontario or whatever.
There will be Canada.
The Atlantic provinces.
There will be Canada-U.S. Autonomous transportation before too long. Mark my words. It'll certainly happen. We haven't needed to look at that just yet, but it's certainly something that will come down the line.
In the last couple of minutes with you, I wanted to understand this from the consumer's perspective, from people's perspective, seeing these vehicles on the road. And I was watching a bit of video on your site, and you had in the room, I think it was you were actually in the video, you had a number of first responders, and I got to thinking, oh my God, I didn't think about that. When you pull over this vehicle and there's no one in there, or how does a vehicle detect the difference between, does it learn to pull over, and just what's the experience, and what has been your experience when people see that there's this truck out there's nobody behind the wheel, maybe they're a bit nervous. How do you manage all that? So talk about first responder stuff. Truck's in an accident, maybe it's behind an accident, and suddenly there's no driver. Who do they call? Like, how do you manage all that at the provincial level, at the city level?
Well, there's a huge amount of groundwork that goes into ensuring that first responders, so police, firefighters, EMS, our emergency medical services, that is, are well trained on everything that we do. We hold in-person training sessions. Not just once. This is not like a one-stop shop. This is again and again and again to ensure that everybody within the jurisdictions in which we operate understand our technology. They understand how to, for example, interact with one of our autonomous vehicles, how our autonomous vehicles interact with them, how we respond to or recognize flashing lights or sirens, what a police officer might want to do or have to do if they wish to pull over our vehicle for any particular reason, and or should there be an incident that our truck is close to, for example, how might we respond to that? How do we interact with unexpected roadworks? All these types of questions. So vast amount of training and education that goes into that, undertaken by our head of first responder engagement and his team. So there's a huge network of stakeholder interactions that take place even before we operate on public roads to ensure that there's a level of comfort and a high level of knowledge with how we operate. So it's a lot of work, but we don't cut corners when it comes to first responder engagement.
Last night I was coming home, and of course it is the season here, and so the police have started setting up roadblocks to check for sobriety and things like that. And I was just imagining looking forward to our discussion today, that this vehicle pulls up and there's actually no driver. So I guess every police officer would know that, oh my goodness, this is an autonomous vehicle, or they'd have that kind of briefing and know what to do. It got me thinking of all these fascinating things.
Couple of great points there. You're right. So Christmas is coming, holiday season is coming. So number one, this is, as we know, this is you're in retail. This is the busiest time for the retail sector, right? So our trucks in this busy holiday season will really be helping to augment our customers' supply chains, help to ensure speedy, safe, reliable durability, throughout the holiday season. Make sure folks get the stuff that they want, where they want it, when they want it. Number two, as far as the police checks are concerned, robot trucks don't drive impaired. They don't drive tired. They don't drive distracted. They don't have an emotional discussion with their partner about the mortgage before they leave the house and then have some issues on the road. It's a very, very consistent, safe approach to operations. So frankly, the first responder community with whom we engage extensively across the continent, we've received nothing but glowing reports.
Oh,
I mean, they want to see safety on the highways that they manage, right? You know, ask any cop what's the worst place they could possibly stand, during their day before they go home to their families. It's stuck on a highway with vehicles speeding along, right close by, and all they want is, because they've had to deal with an incident, right? All they want to see is improved safety on Canadian roadways and U.S. roadways. So helping to enhance safety is one of the biggest feathers in our cap, certainly. And for that reason, we've made some very, very good friends amongst the first responder community.
Yeah, fantastic. Last question, and I guess it's a funny question for such a fast-moving organization. But what's next? I'd imagine, expansion. We've already talked about a few things that are what's next on a pragmatic perspective, expansion across territories and whatever. But, is there new technology? Is it expansion to other areas? What's next for Gatic?
Yeah, so I mentioned the expansion of our partnership with Loblaw, of course, 50 trucks across the GTA, which is a huge step forward, a huge milestone for autonomous transportation in Ontario and across the nation, frankly. But I'll double click on the word scaling. So for us, we're at that inflection point as a company. Okay, so we're nearly a decade old at this point. It's this is no longer a science fiction project.
Right.
This is no longer a twinkle in someone's eye. This is a real, viable, revenue-generating business. We are deployed for multiple customers, the biggest retail, grocery, e-commerce companies across the continent, scaling at a really good pace. So we're not talking about a handful of trucks here, a handful of trucks over there. Right. We're talking hundreds of trucks on the road, commercially deployed for real paying customers, operating day and night, 24/7, round-the-clock transportation, really having an impact for communities, right? Well, the most important narrative that I get to share with lawmakers, with policymakers, with anybody that will listen to me, is why should people care? Why does this matter to the end consumer? It matters because people want stuff higher frequency, closer to home, lower cost. I'll say that again, right? So it's
safety on their roads.
Safety
right?
on safety
before
on
all that,
roads.
they'd love safe roads.
Safety's front and center for us. It's table stakes, right? So this really matters to today's consumer. So being able to deliver on that at scale, that's what's next for us.
Well, Rich, it's been such a fascinating conversation. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. Congratulations on everything you and the team have been able to accomplish, and I look forward to expansion of that. I look forward to seeing one of those vehicles on the road. I'm going to keep my eye out, and while we've been talking, we've been seeing some of those vehicles moving around on video, and we're going to just look for those in the province. And once again, thanks for joining me here on the feed.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.